The wind on Gliese 47 outpost was not like Earth's wind. It howled. It cut. It punished. The human workers called it the blade breeze because it felt like knives against the skin. Most people avoided walking outside at night. It was too cold, too cruel. But Jacob Reed, a quiet maintenance worker, was walking home late after a long shift. His gloves were worn and his breath turned to fog with every step. The steel walls of the colony groaned in the distance as the wind slammed into them. He took a shortcut behind the power station, a narrow alley between two storage units. That's when he saw it, a small shape, huddled beside a garbage vent. At first, Jacob thought it was just broken gear or trash. Then, it moved. He stepped closer, careful, slow. It was a girl, alien. She was curled up into a tight ball, arms around her legs, her skin a pale blue color that shimmered slightly under the red moonlight. She wore only thin cloth, torn and dirty. Her hair was matted with ice. Her shoulders shook violently. She was freezing to death. Jacob knelt beside her. "Hey," he said gently, "can you hear me?" Her eyes opened just a little, bright violet glowing faintly. She flinched as if expecting to be hit. "It's okay," he said, softer now. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't speak, didn't move. Jacob looked around. No one else was out here. No patrols, no cameras, and no one coming to help. He didn't think. He acted. He pulled off his thick thermal jacket and wrapped it around her small frame. She was cold, ice cold. Her body didn't resist. She simply blinked, then slowly leaned into the warmth. "You'll freeze out here," he whispered. Carefully, he picked her up. She was so light it was like carrying a child. Her head rested against his chest. She was still shaking. Jacob didn't understand why she was out here. But in that moment, it didn't matter. She needed help, and he couldn't just walk away. His room in the workers' quarters was small, barely enough for one person, but it was warm. Jacob laid her gently on his bunk and brought over a thermal blanket. Her eyes stayed open, watching his every move. Still no words. He placed a hot packet of soup near her, but she didn't touch it. She was scared. He pulled over a stool and sat beside the bed. "I don't know your name," he said. "I'm Jacob." She said nothing. "That jacket I gave you, it's yours now, keep it." Still nothing. Then, very slowly, she whispered something in a broken voice. "Sira." He leaned closer. "What?" She looked up at him again. "My name is Sira." Jacob gave her a small smile. "Okay, Sira, you're safe now." That night she slept in his bed. Jacob didn't. He stayed in the chair, watching her, making sure she didn't slip away in the night. She looked fragile, like if he turned away she might vanish. At some point her hand twitched. She reached for the edge of the blanket, pulled it up, and hugged it close. Jacob saw her lips move. Just 2 words, barely a breath. "Thank you." The thaw. Next morning, the colony went about its business. Machines roared, drones flew. People worked. But inside room B17, something small and powerful had begun. A human and an alien. One with nothing. One who gave everything he had. A warm jacket, a blanket, and a quiet promise. You are not alone. The heater made a soft, humming sound. That was the only thing Jacob could hear. No footsteps. No words. Not even breathing. He turned slightly in his chair, eyes landing on the figure curled up on his bunk. Sira. She hadn't moved much since last night. The blanket was wrapped tightly around her, covering her shoulders like a shield. His old jacket was still on her, oversized and heavy but warm. Her violet eyes were open, watching him. Careful. Quiet. Like a stray animal still deciding if the hand near it was safe or a trap. Jacob didn't speak. He stood slowly and placed a small cup of broth on the table beside her. She didn't touch it. Instead, she stared at it, then at him. He gave a soft nod. "It's yours," he said. "You can have it." Still, no movement. He sighed and walked over to the far wall, sitting, back down in his work chair. He grabbed a tool from the desk and began adjusting one of his broken drone wings. Click, twist, tap. He didn't try to talk again. He just let the silence stay. 10 minutes later, a soft slurp broke the air. Jacob didn't look, but inside, he smiled. Over. The next 2 days, a strange pattern formed. Sierra didn't leave the room. She didn't ask questions. She didn't explore. She sat quietly, on the floor, not the bed, no matter how many times Jacob pointed at it. She would only eat after he did. She flinched at sudden sounds, especially boots outside the door, and she never turned her back to the window. But slowly, her eyes changed. The fear in them faded, just a little. One evening, Jacob returned from a short shift carrying a fresh loaf of yeast bread from the food hall. He stepped inside and stopped. Sierra was sitting on the floor with his broken drone. Her fingers moved slowly across the surface, cleaning the dust, checking the hinges. She noticed him, pulled her hands back quickly. I'm sorry," she whispered. Jacob knelt down beside her. "You're fixing it?" he asked. She looked down. "I used to repair service bots. Before they threw me out." Jacob's voice was soft. "You did nothing wrong." She blinked. Her hands trembled. No one ever said that before. That night, she finally slept on the bed. Jacob gave her the space, curling up on the floor with a blanket. Around midnight, she stirred. He opened his eyes just enough to see her looking at him. She reached down and gently draped half the blanket over him too. Didn't say a word. Just sat beside the bed with him. Two strangers. Sharing warmth. By the 4th day, she was speaking more, just a few words at a time. Her voice was soft. Sometimes it cracked, but it was steady. She told him she had no family, that she had been sold off planet, that when her contract ended, the company told her she wasn't their problem anymore. No ID, no credits, no shelter, just a broken body and a frozen alley. Jacob listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't question. When she paused, he offered warm tea or silent company. When she cried, he let her cry. And when she finished, she whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Jacob looked at her carefully, then said, "Because you're still here, and that means someone should care." Sierra didn't reply, but her hand slowly reached out and rested gently on his, just for a moment. But in that moment, she wasn't just a silent guest anymore. She was beginning to feel like someone who belonged. She didn't scream, not when the nightmare came, not when her body jerked awake, soaked in sweat, not when her breath caught like it was trapped in her throat. She simply sat up, silent, shaking, and wide-eyed. Jacob was already there. He didn't ask what the dream was. He didn't touch her. He just handed her a warm cup of water and sat beside the bed, waiting for her to breathe again. It was the 3rd night in a row, and the worst one yet. "Sorry," Sierra whispered. "For what?" Jacob asked gently. "For being like this?" He shook his head slowly. "You're surviving." She looked away. "It doesn't feel like living." There was a long pause. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "I used to sleep on metal floors. The cargo bays. I got used to pretending the cold wasn't there. It made the days easier." Jacob leaned forward. "What cargo bay?" And then, she told him, it came in pieces. Broken words. Short sentences. Eyes that stared at the floor. Her planet had been raided during a civil conflict. Her people were scattered. She had been taken, processed, sold. Not as a slave, no one used that word anymore, but as temporary off-world labor. She cleaned, Ship halls, polished metal, changed filters, served meals to officers who never looked at her. They didn't hit her. They didn't need to. They treated her like air. Until one day her contract ended, and instead of a thank you, they shoved her out with a digital slip. Not our concern. No transport, no shelter, no translator. Just dropped on a cold mining colony with nothing but her bare hands. And then came the cold, the hunger, the weeks of hiding behind vents and under crates, until... Jacob. I thought I was going to die, she said, eyes glassy. But I was more afraid no one would notice. Jacob didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Then, slowly, Sira looked up at him. For the first time, her eyes didn't hold fear. They held truth. And Jacob saw it clearly now. This wasn't just a girl trying to recover. This was someone who had been invisible for too long and didn't know how to be seen. Later that morning, Jacob went to the supply office to request extra ration slips. He told the officer, "She's skilled. She fixed a drone faster than I could. She deserves to eat." The officer glanced down at the system. "She's not registered," he said flatly. "No papers, no ID, no job, no food." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Then give her mine." That evening, Sira noticed Jacob's food tray was lighter than usual. She looked at him. "Did they deny me again?" He nodded. She pushed her tray toward him. "You eat." He pushed it back. "We both do." Her lip trembled. "I don't want you to suffer for me." Jacob smiled gently. "I'd rather suffer with you than ignore what you're going through." Sira turned away, hiding her face. But she didn't cry. She just said very softly, "Thank you for seeing me." And in her violet eyes he saw something he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not sadness. A spark. It started with a noise, a soft chirping sound outside the window. Jacob barely noticed it as he tightened the screws on a broken drone. But Sira, who usually stayed quiet in the mornings, stood by the window completely still. She was staring at something with wide, curious eyes. A tiny bird-like creature sat on the ledge. Bright orange feathers. Thin wings. It bobbed its head and chirped again. Jacob looked over. "That's a whisperwing. They nest near the heat vents." Sira didn't answer. Then, without warning, she laughed. Just once. Small. Gentle. Like something had broken free inside her. Jacob stopped working and turned. She was smiling. Not forced. Not polite. A real smile. It was the first time he had seen. It lit up her whole face. And for a moment, the bruises, the hunger, the pain, they all faded. She turned and saw him watching. The smile vanished. Her eyes dropped. "Sorry," she whispered. Jacob stood slowly. "For what?" "I didn't mean to laugh. I know I'm not supposed to." "Sira," he said, walking closer, "you don't need permission to smile." She looked at him, unsure. "Sometimes," he said, "a smile is the bravest thing someone can do." That day became different. Sira began moving more freely around the room. She cleaned up a few things without being asked, helped organize tools, watched him as he fixed one of the water purifiers. She even asked questions. "What does this part do? Why is that light blinking? Why do humans drink something that tastes so bitter?" Pointing at his coffee. Jacob laughed. "Habit and punishment, probably." In the evening, he gave her an old communication tablet. It's limited, but good for learning language. She touched the screen carefully, typed her name, then his, then smiled again. Later, as he cooked dinner, she walked to the shelf where his old drone sat. Half-broken, dusty. She picked it up, sat at the table, and started repairing it with delicate hands. Jacob watched from across the room, and he didn't say a word. After dinner, they sat near the heater sharing stories. Sira told him about her home planet, its three suns, its floating lakes, and the sound of rain that fell like music. Jacob told her about Earth, about trees taller than towers, about oceans that never froze, about dogs. She found the idea of a furry animal that chased sticks hilarious. That night, as she curled up on the bed, she whispered, "Thank you for today." Jacob sat on the floor, back against the wall. "What about today?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I didn't feel broken. The next morning she handed him the fixed drone. "All done," she said, proud. He blinked. "You fixed the stabilizer?" She nodded. He powered it up. The lights blinked green. The drone lifted, hovered perfectly, and gently landed again. Jacob stared at her in shock. "You're amazing." She looked down shyly. "I used to be," she said. "Before everything." "You still are." She looked up at him and smiled again, wider this time. In that quiet little room on a forgotten colony, something rare had happened. Not a rescue, not a miracle, but something even stronger. A beginning. The knock on the door wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps, but Jacob felt the weight of it in his chest before he even stood. He opened the door slowly. 2 colony enforcers stood outside, tall, armored, cold. The one on the left spoke first. "Mr. Reed, we've received reports that you're harboring an unregistered alien civilian in your living quarters." Jacob's jaw clenched. "She's not a threat. Did you file a permit?" "No." "Then she is in violation of Colony Safety Regulation 12C. The second officer pulled out a data pad. "We need to speak with her." Jacob blocked the doorway. "She's resting. You're not taking her." Behind him, Sierra stood silently in the corner. She had heard everything. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just pulled Jacob's jacket tighter around herself and quietly disappeared into the back room. The officers didn't push. They left. But their message was clear. She wasn't welcome. Later, that evening, Jacob sat alone on the edge of the bunk. He stared at the blank wall, fists clenched. Sierra came out, wrapped in a blanket. He didn't look at her. "I'm sorry," he said. She shook her head. "You've done more than enough. They're going to come back. I know." Then softly she whispered, "I'll leave tonight." Jacob stood, eyes wide. "No. They'll punish you. You'll lose your home, your job. I don't care. You should. I care about you," he said, voice tight. "You think I'll let them dump you back out there in the cold? I've survived worse. That's not the point." "Then what is?" Jacob walked to her, gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "That you shouldn't have to survive alone anymore." She wanted to believe him, but some wounds are too deep to heal in just a few weeks. So when he finally fell asleep that night, she left. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say goodbye, just took the jacket he gave her, the only warmth she still had, and vanished into the freezing dark. Jacob woke up just after dawn. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The blanket on the bed was folded neatly. The communication tablet was left on the table. His heart dropped. He ran out the door. He searched for hours, down every alley, behind every exhaust vent, past the recycling units and under the old solar canopies. Then, he saw it. A figure curled up near the same garbage vent where he had first found her. She was holding the jacket tight, her arms around her knees, shaking, just like before. Jacob didn't speak, he didn't shout, he just walked over and wrapped her in his arms, tight, real, warm. Sierra didn't fight it. She just buried her face in his chest. "I didn't want you to lose everything for me," she said, voice breaking. Jacob whispered back, "I already lost something the moment you walked away." For a long time they sat like that, in silence, holding on to something that the cold couldn't steal. Back in his room, Jacob didn't call for help. He called for a meeting with the Colony Oversight Council. And this time, he wouldn't be quiet. The room was small. The walls were clean, gray, and cold. Everything about the Colony Oversight Council chamber felt designed to keep emotion out. But when Jacob Reed stepped onto the speaking platform, he didn't bring silence. He brought a storm. The 5 council members sat behind their glowing desks, dressed in smooth uniforms with blinking badges. The head counselor, a human named Merrick, leaned forward. "You asked for an emergency audience, Mr. Reed. This had better be worth our time." Jacob placed both hands on the platform rail. The chamber was full: officers, engineers, medical staff, even a few curious miners. Sierra sat in the back corner, wrapped in his old jacket, head down. But she was here. She stayed, and that gave Jacob all the strength he needed. "I want to talk about what this colony stands for," he began. "Because, lately I've been wondering." Counselor Merrick raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a political session. We're here to address—" "You're here," Jacob interrupted, "because a girl nearly froze to death outside your walls, and when someone tried to help her, you threatened to punish him." Murmurs broke through the room. Counselor Merrick's voice sharpened. "She is an unregistered alien. There are protocols." "She's a person," Jacob shouted. The room fell silent. He looked at each of them, voice steady now. "A person with a name, a past, a mind. She fixes machines better than half your engineers. She learns fast. She listens. She smiles." He paused, his hand tightening on the rail. "But you never saw any of that. You saw a number, a rule, a file you could ignore." One of the counselors, a woman named Dr. Hira, leaned forward. "You're asking us to change regulations. That's not a simple request." "No," Jacob said. "I'm asking you to remember what it means to be human." He stepped back and pointed toward Sierra, who hadn't lifted her head. "She didn't come here to break rules. She didn't plan to be dumped on your doorstep. She was abandoned. And you, almost let her die twice." Someone in the crowd muttered, "He's right." Jacob looked directly at Merrick. "She's not dangerous. But if you turn her away again, you are." There was silence. Then the crowd clapped. Not all, not loud, but enough. Enough for the council to notice. Enough to make them uncomfortable. Counselor Merrick's voice was tighter now. "This sets a precedent. If we change policy for her, then maybe that's the right kind of precedent," Jacob said. "Kindness." An hour later, the session ended. The council left for review. But something had shifted. Jacob knew it. And more importantly, so did Sierra. Outside the chamber, Jacob found her standing alone near the railing. She looked up at him, uncertain. "You didn't have to do all that," she whispered. He smiled. "I didn't do it for you." She blinked. "You didn't?" "I did it because someone needed to." Then, softer. "And because I couldn't bear the thought of you out in that cold again." She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just stepped forward and hugged him. Tight, like she finally believed it was real. And in the middle of a harsh colony built by law and cold metal, 2 souls stood together, held not by rules, but by something far stronger. The official decision came 3 days later, a digital notice, cold and formal. After special review, the Colony Oversight Council has approved temporary protected status to the non-registered civilian referred to as Sierra. Effective. Immediately, she is granted work rights, food access, medical care, and shelter. No sorry, no thank you, just permissions. But for Sierra, it was everything. When Jacob read the message aloud to her, she didn't speak at first. She just stood there, the words echoing in her ears like a sound she wasn't used to hearing. She was allowed to stay. She was allowed to exist. Then, quietly, she said, "I don't know what to do now." Jacob smiled softly. "Start over." They moved to a small unit on the edge of the colony, just past the greenhouses. It wasn't big, just 1 room, 1 heater, 1 window, but it was theirs. Jacob taught her how to register for work, how to log her meals, how to request tools. He even fixed up one of the old drones for her to play with. At night, They'd sit together on the floor, drinking tea and watching. The low stars shimmer beyond the dusty glass. Sira never asked for more, because for her this was already more than enough. One morning, Jacob returned from a shift to find the room changed. Sira had cleaned, organized, and even added small decorations. Pieces of wire twisted into shapes. Broken panels turned into wall art. She had written their names on a datapad and placed it by the door like a welcome sign. "Too much?" she asked shyly. He shook his head. "It's perfect." She blushed. "It's starting to feel like home." Jacob sat beside her. "It is home." She looked at him, uncertain. "But I've never had one." He paused, then gently reached over and placed his hand over hers. "You do now." Sira got her first job at the maintenance station. Not a hard one, just fixing damaged filter fans and replacing worn parts. But she was fast, focused, quiet. Her work was clean. Her reports always early. Some of the workers whispered behind her back. Not everyone liked the idea of an alien with no past getting human work, but no one dared challenge her, because when they saw Jacob waiting at the gate each evening, they knew she wasn't alone. Every evening they walked back together. Sometimes in silence, sometimes with laughter. One night Sira spoke softly as they reached their door. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found me?" Jacob stopped walking. He looked at her seriously. "Every day." She looked down. "Do you regret it?" He lifted her chin gently. Not for a second. Weeks turned into months. Sira began speaking more, smiling more, laughing more. She fixed things in the colony no one else could. She even taught a group of kids how to repair drones. They brought her broken machines every week like puzzles to solve. They called her Miss Sira. She never corrected them. But the past doesn't vanish just because it's quiet. One night, Sira woke up with tears on her cheeks. She sat on the floor, curled in a blanket staring out the window. Jacob woke up and sat beside her. She whispered, "Sometimes I still feel like it'll all disappear, like someone will come and take it all back." He nodded. "I know that feeling." She leaned against him. "I just don't want to forget where I came from, but I also don't want to live there anymore." "You're not," he said softly. "You're here. With me." She turned, looked at him for a long moment, then said something she had never said before. "I love you, Jacob." He didn't say anything right away. He just smiled, held her hand, and whispered back, "You've always been someone, Sira. You just needed a place to be seen." Their life wasn't perfect. They had bad days. Repair jobs, broke. Credits ran low, but they always came back to each other, and that made the hard days feel softer. One day, the colony leaders sent out a call for community mentors, people who could help teach and guide new arrivals, people who had been through something. Jacob and Sira were the first to sign up. A year after she had been found in the cold, Sira stood in front of a group of scared, tired faces, new arrivals from a collapsed mining station. Some human, some alien, some quiet like she used to be. She told her story, not all of it, just enough to show them that broken things could be rebuilt, just like people. That night, Jacob came home to find her sitting on the step, watching the stars. He sat beside her, arm around her shoulder. She leaned into him. "I think today," she whispered, "was the first time I felt like more than just someone who was saved." Jacob kissed the top of her head. "That's because you are." She looked up at the sky, the stars glimmering like quiet promises. Then she smiled, wide, warm, whole. She had nothing when she arrived. Not a home, not a name that anyone cared to say, not even a voice people listened to. But the first time a human wrapped her in his arms, she started to become someone, and now she was everything.